Clay Henry with us from Hawgs Illustrated. Of course, you can hear him on the Morning Rush as well. Read him at Whole Hog Sports. And Clay, what's going on today? How are you?
I'm good, Phil. Drew, glad to be here.
Yeah, you reminded me this morning when we were getting in touch with each other that I need to watch Growing Up Grovey, at least the first episode of it, which came out, I think, last week.
It did.
Does the second episode air today? And this is on AETN, right?
I think it's on Cox.
Okay, Cox, that's right.
But there's I got a link. I watched it on my laptop. I mean, you don't have to subscribe to anything. Mm-hmm. It's a free, and it is unbelievable. You know, I was telling y'all on the break that I write things sometimes because I need to write something. You know, I mean, I need, like, okay, I'm going to write a column and scratch my head and pull something out, and it, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I know, there's good and bad with everything, right? Sometimes you feel better about your stuff than other times. And then every once in a while you get to do something that you just love. You love the person, you love the work, and you pour your passion into it. You flow through that story, and it produces your best work. And I haven't written this story yet, but I know how it's going to turn out. And it's because I love Quinn. I love this project. I love what he did. It's his story. The third episode, which will be next week, is about him being a caregiver for, I think, 7 years for his mother as she had Alzheimer's and dementia. And I just know seeing that side of Quinn, and he wants people to see that side and understand what it is to be a caregiver. I've talked to Coach Broyles and Betsy Broyles about what the blueprint of being a caregiver for that stage, and it is and Quinn said he finally figured it out. Go minute by minute, and every minute try to make your mother smile. Try to make that minute her best minute. And, of course, she will forget it minutes later, then do it again and again and again. And I can see Quinn doing that, and it just makes you want to just hug him. And, of course, he's one of the most beloved Razorbacks. And there's going to be stuff in episode 2 that highlight that I'm looking forward to watching Friday night of the Arkansas-Houston game, his duel and the team's duel with Houston and Andre Ware, which is, one of the greatest offensive duel in college football history. I mean, it's, nobody stopped nobody. and they've got the coaches cut up film and paired it with Paul Eel's call.
Wow.
Now, just think about what that's cool. Never been done. This Paul is, always had a blank canvas, just his voice. Now he's going to have video behind his voice. And Quinn says that there's enough stuff left over from all that. They may do an episode 4 and probably go find Andre Ware and talk to him about it, which Andre loves to talk about it, even though, he's got the Heisman Trophy. Quinn's got the victory of the game. So.
Well, and Quinn is such an insanely positive person. And by the way, the website you can watch this for free is yourview.com, YURVIEW.com. It's part of the Cox network, but it's free for anybody that wants to go on there.
Take your laptop and enter it in a browser, and boom, it's there.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
Yeah, I think I'll probably do that tonight for both episodes. We know Quinn as the color analyst for the Razorback football team and co-host on the Daily with Matt Zimmerman, and he's one of these guys, Clay, that he always has what looks like a smile on his face and a positive attitude, and that's just got to be incredibly difficult with what he's dealt with.
When you watch the video, the first episode is the only one that's out there, so the second episode will be Friday night. The first episode is his growing up days in Duncan. Of course, I was at the Tulsa World and kind of covered recruiting a little bit. Covering recruiting in the mid-'80s wasn't an art form. You just did a little bit of it. But I was just on the edge of covering high school football, covered some games. I knew all about Quinn. And then one of my great pleasures, I started Hawgs Illustrated in 92 and was together with Sooners Illustrated for a few months before I bought it. but there was a Sooners Illustrated recruiting file, and there was a manila folder with Quinn Grovey's name on it. I opened that up, and in it was, do you remember when you were in high school, you would get these trading card pictures, like it would be your picture, and it would be done in a trading card way, in a frame. There was a Quinn Grovey trading card that he had sent in as a 10th grader to Sooners Illustrated, because he was the top 2 or 3 recruits in the state of Oklahoma, along with Charles Thompson and Mike Gundy. So they were doing a lot of recruiting stories. And so there's this little, trading card picture of a young Quinn Grovey kneeling down in his uniform with a football. You can just visualize that picture, right? Mm. And I called Quinn, and, years later, I said, hey, I got this. And we met for lunch, and I thought he was going to tear up. He says, I'm going to give this to my wife. And but when you see that picture, and then you think back and you watch the video of him playing in junior high and high school, it's all there. It's cut up in a fantastic production, skillful way. Interview his teammates, his coaches, showed his house, talked about his family. And his family, mom and dad, both worked at Halliburton. This is a top-end Duncan family that Quinn came from, and it's just, they interviewed the mayor, and it's just, you're gonna just sit there and just smile and feel good all the way through it.
Yeah, and while I've only been here for 2 months, I haven't gotten a chance to meet Quinn yet. I've heard nothing but great things when I was interviewing for this job and going through the process of possibly being the co-host at halftime. A buddy of mine recommended that I listen to Quinn's podcast, and I know we're against the break here, Clay, so I'll get your answer on the other side. As somebody who hasn't seen him play, who would you compare him to as somebody that a 26
I'm going to love this.
Would know?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. I even wonder. It's so funny. And everybody knows here. I'm a city boy, right?
I'm calling you out for not knowing how to help somebody.
I thought, bale some hay. I thought that he invited me to come bale hay so that it would sound like I know what I'm talking about.
I think he did.
Bit more. Clay, have you ever baled hay before? And did I sound better with that read going into the last commercial break?
So my dad's dad, my grandfather, had a farm in Saline County. And as a young boy, we would, in retirement, he was a traveling salesman. And when he retired, my dad grew up where Park Plaza Mall was, which was out in, it was in the country back then. And then when the city moved there, my grandpa bought this place in Saline County, and I would visit, and occasionally they would bale hay. I was too little to throw the bales of hay around, but my grandfather and I would build forts, and then me and my 3 brothers would get to play in the hay. They have to dry in the field for a while. And so those bales of hay, the square bales, not the round ones. And one of my worst memories as a child, probably at age 5, 6, 7 in there, I was in that fort built out of bales of hay, and I realized there's a rattlesnake in the fort.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the walls, I could not get out the opposite direction of the snake. To get away from the snake, I had to dive over the snake.
Ooh.
And I dove over, and then I rolled, and I hit the ground running and ran all the way to the house. And all I could say when I got there, my grandmother says, why are you crying? I just, rattlesnake.
Oh, man. Clay just met Drew a couple of days ago. Or that was last week at football practice briefly. Clay, I want you to picture right now Drew Barrett sprinting as fast as he can in the opposite direction from you while you're telling this story. Because the one thing in life that scares him more than anything else, snakes.
Snakes. I cannot do snakes, Clay. It is the actual phobia.
I can't do snakes either.
It's a phobia to where, me and the missus was in town last week, and we went on a hike, and she jokingly said snake, and I took off for one, and then yelled at her for about 10 minutes because she made a joke. It is that much of a fear to me. But back to what we were talking about before we hit the break. I'm really excited to hear, kind of the comparisons you have for me for somebody who never got to see, hasn't seen Quinn Grovey tapes or didn't get to see him play live.
Okay, I'm going to give you the ultimate snake comparison. So the snake that you should fear the most, that is aggressive and is nasty and quick and strikes, is a cottonmouth water moccasin. Quinn Grovey played quarterback like a cottonmouth water moccasin. He could strike with such quickness. My dad always said, and I told Quinn this story today, that Quinn played quarterback like he was plugged into an electrical socket. He was juiced. I mean, the quickness, the ability to cut, the ability to run away from defenders, make them miss, wiggle. Not big, 5'10", 190 pounds. He might have got to 200, I'm not sure. But he played with 4.3 speed. He was not a great passer when he got to campus, but David Lee strengthened his arm. He made him pass from his knees. In other words, just use his shoulder and arm and strengthen that arm. He had the ability to throw on the run, which I think was God-given because he had it as a ninth grader at Duncan. But he could throw on the run, sprint out passing, but then the ultimate compliment I can give a quarterback is that he never made the wrong decision. His decision-making and ability to think, and that's what makes him Quinn Grovey. I mean, he's just a great decision-maker. And when you talk to him, you figure that out. But there's a lot of people that can slowly process, but he processed and thought and reacted in unbelievable quickness, and it was always the right decision. But he played in the wishbone. He was a runner first, but I think he finished his career, if you go back and look at the numbers, he was a great, accurate, perfect combination of run-pass as a senior. And
you're right about that.
Yeah, only Arkansas quarterback to lead the Razorbacks to the Cotton Bowl twice. Nobody else did it, and that's when you're saying who's the all-time greatest. And I've talked to my dad about that, and he was a big fan of Grovey's, and he'd talk about Clyde Scott and Lance Allworth and Billy Moore and all the quarterbacks. And I don't think he knew Matt Jones. I think Matt was post his death. But Grovey was right there with the ones that I just mentioned, greatest of all time.
So I want to ask you in a comparison then, and I know that they play the position a lot differently. The position itself is a lot different based upon the offense that they're running, and the body types are different too. But one of the things you said that Quinn was so good at was making defenders miss. And a lot of that probably had to happen in the backfield as well. So KJ Jefferson, can he? How will he handle the pass rush? And because I know there's a lot of returning offensive linemen. I get that. I just feel like KJ's still going to have a lot of pressure coming on him, and how he handles that is going to be a huge part of whether or not the program takes a step forward this year.
Yeah, the offense is set up for him to know where guys are coming and to be able to make them miss. And he doesn't have Grovey quickness, but he has strength. And he's got speed. But I thought that against Missouri, he was able to slide in the pocket, step up. And that's the key at quarterback play, is to let the pocket form, and then you step up, and everything opens up. And it's when you step up and you slide in that A gap that's kind of moved back 3 or 4 yards, and you step up and you're 2 yards off the line, and everybody in the secondary and your linemen have kind of pushed everybody back, then you can run or pass, and it is so dangerous. And that's where I think he's going to be good. And the same thing goes for Hornsby, because I think he's got more of the wiggle like a Grovey, 185 pound scat back. But KJ, I saw against Missouri, you forget they made 34 first downs against Missouri. 34 first downs. So it wasn't just big plays. It was putting together drives. And it's one of the few times they did that last year where they took the ball and really were able to use some up-tempo because they have worn down the opposition. 34 first downs. Now, they gave up 37. So it's one of those Houston-Arkansas shootouts. But he has ability to move around in the pocket. It's not Grovey-like. There are no Quinn Groveys. There was just one. I mean, God only gave us one of those. So I don't know if that answered your question, Phil.
Well, Clay, where right now do you think KJ ranks as far as SEC quarterbacks? Because we do have a lot of turnover in the SEC. Where do you think he ranks now? And for Arkansas to have the success that it wants to have, where do you think he has to rank at the end of the season? Yeah,
Drew, I think that's a good question. I don't think I have any ability to tell you what those guys look like. I mean, I haven't seen them. That's the problem. There is a lot of turnover. And where does he rank? I think it'll depend on where his offensive line is. And I know that's kind of dodging the question a little bit, but I think he's plenty good enough. And I'll go back to, something Brett Bielema said when we were talking about Brandon Allen. And there are so many people down on Brandon Allen in the middle of his career. Maybe not as a senior, I think, but it was the team was so bad around him that you judged him because they couldn't get it done. But it's like, hey, you can't just get swamped every time you drop back. You've got to have some help. There's got to be a running game. There's got to be help at wide receiver. There's got to be help in the offensive line. That's where I think this team is better, that KJ is going to have some help, and he doesn't have to be Quinn Grovey or Superman. Don't try to be Superman. Just do the things that are in our offense and get us out of bad plays. And when things do break down, either you scramble, make something with your feet, or you throw it to grandma. You get it in the fifth row. I think he can do all those things.
Well, and he makes a lot of sense that the quarterback play a lot of times is the product of everybody else around him.
It is.
And hopefully it feels like with so many returners and what feels like a good group of young running backs and a couple of exciting receivers as well, aside from Traylon Burks, that maybe, just maybe, as long as the offensive line holds, there will be a step forward for KJ in this team.
It was kind of like, we watched Kevin Kopps last year. I love Kevin Kopps' analogies. But there were times where, hey, I'm going to strike them all out. And he did. But then there were times he's like, you know what? We got a little bit of a lead. Here it is. Y'all knock it around, and our guys are pretty good on defense. And KJ, he doesn't have to strike them out every time. He can just hand it off and keep them out of bad plays. And that's the sign of a good quarterback. Those decisions that we liked with Grovey were always right. KJ, he has to show us that he can do that.
The start of the season is just around the corner, and if you're into sports betting, Bet Online is where you should go to win some money today. Whether it's live bets during games or future bets on who you think will win the championship, Bet Online has all the latest odds, news, and information for all your online sports betting needs. Visit the website today or use your mobile device to join and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. So before the next big game or before the season starts, head on over to Bet Online and start playing today. That's Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts.